So this is my Brontë collection. Got some more stuff to organize, but basically I've got the Brontë Life and Letters, the Virgins of Haworth, Brontes of Ireland, the three Brontes in the Steps of the Brontes and their stars. This one's really cool, it's made out of wood, the home of the Brontes. Some old society transactions, various postcards and vintage postcards of both the Brontes and surrounding areas. Some letters from 20 years ago from the parsonage. Various Victorian era things. Up here is a collection of books, paperbacks that I put fake spines on so they would look better. So yeah, and this is early typed up poems by Branwell. Some of those titles. Let me get focused in. The Symington catalog. This is anonymous, but it is a very old notebook of someone's Brontë notes that I found online that I thought was nice. The Brontë Society catalog of the museum. Another catalog, I think that one's from 1932. The Quarterly Review. It's an actual the review of Jane Eyre from 1849, bound. This with a nice little stamp on it. Now this pew, in case you can't read it, says, "The antique pine base of this plaque is made from the original pews at Christ Church, Scarborough, where the funeral service of Anne Brontë was held on May 28, 1849. She was 29. Christ Church was consecrated on August 23, 1828. It was demolished in October 1979. So that was made from that. Some more books. This is an autographed copy of Haworth Idol by Roberta Trigg. Sorry. The Miracle of Haworth, the Brontë Story, a Brontë Moorland Village, which is one of my favorite things because this is actually a signed copy that belonged to, I'm blanking on his name, Jonas Bradley, who was a teacher in Stanbury. It's got all of his cuttings laid in, as they say, in the beginning and the end, all related to Brontë things. Brontë Moors and Villages from Thornton to Haworth, which is a beautifully illustrated copy. This is the original. I have an illustration of that. It's actually an engraving that I believe it was Emily then tried to paint a copy of, or draw a copy of. And here is my Brontë wood necklace made by Fabulous Victorian. Picture I took of the parsonage when I visited in 1987. A nice aqua tint. That is the plate, the print, me at the parsonage. Some views of the room. There, I took a screenshot from the documentary on the collection because I just love that so much. These are some paperwork from the 19th century that were signed by a Brontë relative. That I've written about is, let's see, that is Maria Bronte's cousin who married her sister on the same day and at the same time as she and Patrick got married. So this, they're the Brontë children's uncle cousin. These are some different editions. This is a Dulac, which I love the illustrations in that. Another old copy of Shirley from, I think what year is that? It's an early edition. If I had a hand free, I would do it. A Thornton edition. There's a different edition. This is a married set that I bought piece by piece. And some of the editions are pretty cool. They're signed by, there was one that's like a DuPont family member. Of course, a 19th century Yorkshire relish plate. A contemporary to the Brontes map of the West Riding of Yorkshire. And down here we have Emily Brontë by Charles Simpson, the complete poems, the shorter version by Emily, The Life and Private History by Romer Wilson, Critics on Charlotte and Emily by Hinckley, A Life of Emily Brontë, The Art of Emily Brontë, Famous Women, Emily Brontë, and I had to put this one with it because it was a companion piece about George Sand. Branwell Bronte's lost novel, a biography on him, the poems. This is where I'm still organizing. A book cover for the Tenant. These are some of my little treasures. I love this. This is my ticket from when I visited. These are some contemporary or late Victorian views of Brussels, as the girls would have known it when they lived there. Some pictures I took. A little clipping from a Brontë centenary, however you say that. Some other old postcards, photos I've taken. My restoration of the diary paper. These are all Edwardian views of the museum and the surrounding area, the moors. I love that gold collection. Some pictures I've taken. Mr. Brontë, the Reverend Brontë, in a bad frame. A book about the parsonage with the old wallpaper. This is my collection, the little self-published book. It's the musical library, one of the editions that they actually used to play music out of themselves. One of my pride and joys, it's a report card of a student who went to the same school in Brussels where Charlotte and Emily were being taught by the Agers, and actually is signed by Madame, and on the reverse is initialed by Constantine. This is half of original pencil illustration by an artist, and I'm blanking, Joan Hassel, and as you can see, that's half of Villette and the different characters as she was sketching them for a frontispiece of an edition that was never made, but she is famous for other editions of mostly Austen works, and that's an autographed edition of that, really old. This is a married copy of the first American edition of Gaskell's Life of Charlotte. Some copies of things relating to their time in Brussels, maps. That is Charlotte Brontë and her circle, The Life of Charlotte Brontë. We go down to here and we have The Brontë Myth, The Brontë Project, Charlotte and Emily Brontë, a reference guide by Crump, The Crimes of Charlotte Brontë, Glenn Hughes's Brontë, Charlotte and Emily Brontë, a reference guide to editions of that, a book about the male muses, Illustrated Brontes of Haworth, The Landscape of the Brontes, the Fraser book on the Brontes, the Belgian essays, a later edition, paperback edition by Juliet Barker of the Brontë Bible, as I call it, some old gazettes, old transactions, a Brontë Studies, and I think that is the main part. Oh, up here, one more shelf. That's a nice edition of them. Brontë Poems, which is a really nice old edition. A pencil sketch, a little miniature version of the parsonage, a contemporary cup and saucer, a nice old standard library with Charlotte featured, and a really handsome edition of the Sisters Brontë. I'm going to go over to the other cabinet now. One more. This is some source books that they would have had. The 1840s edition of Blackwood's magazine, the Edinburgh versions, not the New York versions, and some other books that they used. This is an autographed copy of Wuthering Heights as you can see, for my daughter Emily. And then we've got Emma Brown, an edition of Jane Eyre, Dark Quartet, an earlier copy of the Brontë Bible by Barker, the Brontes, Life and Letters, The Art of the Brontes, my brand new Christmas present, a Brontë Encyclopedia, a Brontë Family Chronology, and we've got A Chainless Soul, Emily Brontë, Poems of the Brontë, Recipes from the Home of the Brontes, Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, a copy of Agnes Grey, Charlotte Bronte's novels, Charlotte Brontë the Self-Conceived, Branwell by Douglas Martin, Miss Miles, the Mary Taylor book, Shaggy Muses, which mentions Keeper, Paranormal West Yorkshire, Ghost and Gravestones of Haworth, a Cambridge Companion to the Brontes, and Oxford Companion to the Brontes A to Z, the Brontes at Haworth by Miss Anne Dinsdale, and Tom Howard's Brontë Country, along with a autographed copy of Peggy Hewitt's These Lonely Mountains, some of Miss Winifred's commentaries, the Norton Critical Edition of Wuthering Heights, The Strange World of the Brontes, and Emily Brontë Heretic. This is my William Grimshaw teapot, which is larger in scale and slightly different wording, but almost otherwise identical to the one in the parsonage. It may be a copy, it may be an original. Still haven't had an in-person second party figure that out, but if it is a fake, I've written an article on why in of itself that is a bizarre thing, seeing as it's not an exact copy. So it's not trying to fool anyone, it just is. It's a mystery. These are plates of different Brontë related things that came as a set. I've got one over on the wall in a different version. This, pardon the class, is the Newhall 1790s knitting pattern number 195 that the Brontes themselves used, and you can see in the parsonage on display. Some whimsical prints of the Brontes. And finally, this is a Royal Jubilee edition of the Black Bull plate is edged in.